When my wife, Helena, passed away, our house fell silent in a way that words can't describe. My son, Dorian, smiled faintly at the funeral, not out of comfort, but out of calculation. 2 days later, he stood in the living room she designed with her own hands and said, "Dad, it's time to sell. You can't handle this place alone." I didn't argue. I just watched him circle through the rooms like a broker assessing square footage instead of memories. He thought he was finally in control. He thought silence meant surrender. What he didn't know was that Helena had prepared something far greater than any inheritance, a secret clause buried inside a $50 million trust. A test. A trap for greed. So I said nothing. I waited. And every day, I thanked God for my silence, because that silence would save his soul before it destroyed him. The morning of Helena's funeral was gray in a way that felt personal, like the sky itself was mourning her. The rain had stopped hours earlier, but the air still carried that wet chill that seeps into your bones. I stood by her casket, my hands trembling slightly as I adjusted my tie. 42 years of marriage, and it all ended in a wooden box surrounded by lilies she had once planted in our backyard. Our friends filled the small chapel, faces blurred by grief and candlelight. But my son, Dorian, looked strangely detached, impeccably dressed, hair slicked back, not a single tear in sight. He hugged me briefly when he arrived, one of those polite, distant gestures that feel more like an obligation than comfort. "We'll get through this, Dad," he said, glancing at his phone as if grief had a schedule. When the pastor spoke about Helena's compassion, Dorian shifted impatiently in his seat. When I tried to read the words she had written before she passed, he leaned toward me and whispered, "Dad, maybe keep it short. People have things to do." Those words cut deeper than anything else that day. People have things to do. As if his mother's final goodbye was a business meeting that ran too long. I looked out across the room, her students from the art academy, our old neighbors, the church choir. Every single person there carried a piece of Helena's warmth, except for the one person who should have felt it the most. My son looked at his watch again, tapping his thumb against his phone. I could almost hear Helena's voice in my head, calm but firm, "Thad, if he ever forgets what love looks like, let him learn the hard way." After the service, while people hugged me and offered their condolences, Dorian was already by the door, speaking to someone on his Bluetooth earpiece. "Yeah, I'll handle it next week," he said quietly. When he caught me looking, he flashed a small, polite smile. "Just work, Dad. You know how it is." I didn't reply. I just nodded, because sometimes silence hurts more than anger. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I sat in the living room surrounded by Helena's things, her sketchbook open on the coffee table, her favorite shawl draped over the armchair. The house still smelled like her perfume, that faint blend of jasmine and cedar she always wore. I stared at the framed photo on the mantel, Helena, laughing under the autumn sun, Dorian standing beside her at 15, pretending not to smile for the camera. That was before ambition took the place of gratitude. The front door creaked. Dorian stepped in, his tone brisk. "Dad, I've been thinking. The house is too big for you. You don't need all this space. I can help you list it at a good price, move you somewhere easier to manage." He spoke like a consultant pitching a strategy, not a son talking to his father. I wanted to ask him if he remembered the nights Helena stayed up painting those walls herself, the way she hummed old hymns while sanding the window frames. But I didn't. I simply said, "Not tonight, Dorian." He sighed, nodded, and said, "We'll talk tomorrow then." When the door closed behind him, the house went silent again, except this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was waiting. I looked at Helena's sketchbook, tracing her handwriting with my fingers. On the first page, she had written one sentence years ago, "Love builds, greed dismantles." That night, I whispered a prayer. "Lord, let my silence do what my words no longer can." Because deep down, I already knew Dorian's lesson was just beginning. The next morning, Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, the same one Helena had insisted we widen 10 years ago so she could let the morning in. I stood there for a while, coffee cooling in my hand, watching the dust dance in the light. The house felt alive in a way she would have loved. Every wall, every corner still carried her touch. Helena wasn't just a woman who decorated. She designed souls into spaces. She used to say, a home should breathe. It should tell the truth about who lives there. And this house did. The creak of the hallway floors, the faint smell of pine oil from the shelves she polished herself, each detail whispered her name. But to Dorian, it was just square footage. Just equity waiting to be unlocked. When he came by that afternoon, his attitude was almost cheerful. "Dad," he said, scanning the living room like an investor sizing up a property, "you've got serious value here. The market's still strong. If we sell now, you could buy a nice condo, maybe even something near the lake." I didn't answer immediately. He walked over to the grand piano, Helena's piano, and tapped one of the keys absent-mindedly. The soft note hung in the air like a ghost. "This," he said, "might have to go. Buyers prefer open space these days. You know, minimalism." Minimalism. That word sounded like sacrilege in this house. Helena filled this place with life, with color, with meaning. She used to spend entire weekends rearranging the living room because light behaves differently with time. I could still see her in that corner, sketching floor plans in her notebook, her glasses sliding down her nose. "Do you remember when your mother refinished that table?" I asked quietly. Dorian looked at it, oak, hand-carved, still shining after all these years. "Yeah. I remember she spent a whole week on it," he said with a shrug. "It's nice, but furniture doesn't appreciate in value." I almost smiled at the irony. Neither does respect, I thought. Helena had a saying for moments like this: people who see only price tags will never see beauty. I decided not to argue. Words weren't what would teach him. Time would. Later that evening, I wandered upstairs to her studio, the one room Dorian never cared to visit. The scent of paint and cedar still lingered. Her brushes were neatly lined up beside a half-finished canvas. On her drafting desk lay blueprints of this house, the original designs she drew before we even broke ground. In the corner, her handwriting in soft pencil read, "This home will hold our story long after we're gone." I traced the words with my fingertips. She always planned farther ahead than I did, farther than either of us realized. From the window, I saw Dorian in the driveway, on the phone again, pacing. His voice carried faintly through the glass. "Yeah, I can get it listed fast," he said. "Dad just needs a little convincing." Convincing. That's what he called it. I closed the notebook gently, knowing something Helena once told me was now coming true. A year before she passed, while lying in her hospital bed, she said, "Thad, if Dorian ever tries to sell this house, don't stop him with anger. Let him show the world who he's become." I hadn't understood then. I did now. That night, I sat by her piano, pressing one quiet note. The sound lingered, soft and hollow. This wasn't just a house. It was Helena's final message, a mirror built from memory, waiting to show Dorian his reflection. And I had no intention of interrupting that lesson. 2 weeks after the funeral, Dorian arrived again, this time with company. A tall woman in a tailored blazer followed him into the foyer, her heels clicking like a metronome against the hardwood floors Helena had chosen herself. "Dad," Dorian said, smiling too widely, "this is Sabrina Knox, one of the top agents in town. She's just here to take a look, give us some numbers." No commitment yet. No commitment yet. The same phrase he used when he was 12 and wanted a dog he'd promised to care for until the first week passed. I said nothing and gestured for them to come in. Sabrina's professional eyes scanned the place like a hawk over prey. "It's charming," she said. "Classic structure. But buyers today prefer more open layouts. You might consider removing this wall. She tapped her pen against the load-bearing column that Helena had specifically designed to separate the kitchen from the dining area. Dorian nodded eagerly. Exactly what I was thinking. Open concept. Maybe new lighting, whitewash the woodwork. Her woodwork. Helena's hand sanded crown molding, her favorite walnut banisters reduced to market obstacles. Sabrina jotted notes while Dorian walked her through the house like a proud consultant. We could easily list this at 900,000, she said at last. Maybe more with updates. Dorian turned to me, eyes bright. See, Dad? You'd make a fortune. You could live comfortably for the rest of your life. I already live comfortably, I said. He chuckled softly, the way people do when they think you're naive. Dad, comfort isn't about holding on to old things. It's about moving forward. Moving forward. Funny how greed always disguises itself as progress. As they walked upstairs, I stayed behind, my hand resting on the dining table. Helena had once spilled varnish on that very spot and laughed about it for hours, saying, imperfection makes a home honest. Now Dorian wanted to sand her honesty away. When they returned, Sabrina said, I'll send over a market report by tomorrow. You'll be surprised at what this property's worth. Thank you, I said politely. But my voice was distant. After she left, Dorian lingered by the door. Dad, don't look at me like that. Mom wouldn't want you struggling here alone. I met his eyes. Your mother loved this house, Dorian. Every detail, every inch. She built it to last. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Mom's gone, Dad. We can't live in the past. I almost answered, but Helena's voice echoed in my head, don't defend me. Let him reveal himself. So I stayed silent. The next day, he brought someone Newa financial advisor named Elliot Crane. The man wore a navy suit and a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Montgomery, he said, shaking my hand, Dorian tells me you might be interested in reallocating some assets once the house sells. I can help you manage the proceeds, minimize taxes, diversify your investments. Proceeds. Investments. Words that sounded sterile next to Helena's memory. I'm not sure I'm selling yet, I replied. Dorian jumped in quickly. Dad, this isn't about pressure. We just want you secure. You've worked hard your whole life. Let us help you plan. Us. The word stung more than it should have. Somewhere along the way, my son had started speaking the language of people who measure worth in decimal points. After they left, I stood alone in the quiet again. The late afternoon light poured across the hardwood, highlighting the dust particles swirling in the air. Helena once told me, dust is proof that light has touched something. I looked around the room, realizing that the people who loved her were gone, but her plans were still here, waiting to be discovered. That night, I opened her sketchbook again. On one of the back pages, I noticed something faint I'd missed before, an address written in her delicate handwriting and a name beneath it. Marina Vale, attorney at law. My pulse quickened. It wasn't the first time Helena had surprised me, but this felt different. Purposeful. I turned the page. On the next sheet, she'd written just 6 words. Thad, when silence hurts, trust the plan. I didn't know what the plan was yet. But I was about to find out. The next morning, I drove to the address written in Helena's notebook. It was a small brick building downtown with frosted glass doors that read, Marina Vale and Associates Estate Law. The name alone felt like a whisper from Helena. She'd always been deliberate about the people she trusted, and if this woman's name was here, it meant Helena had chosen her for a reason. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and coffee. A woman in her mid-40s stepped out from an office lined with books and certificates. Her presence was calm, confident, like someone who'd already read the ending to your story but would let you discover it at your own pace. Mr. Montgomery, she said warmly. Helena told me you might come one day. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Hearing my wife's name spoken in the present tense did something strange to my chest. She told you about me? I managed to ask. Marina smiled gently. About you, about your son, and about the house. She met with me 3 years ago around the time she began her treatments. She was very thorough. She wanted to make sure everything was fair. Fair. That word caught in my throat. Helena's idea of fairness was never about equality, it was about justice. She gestured for me to sit. Before she passed, Helena established what we call the Montgomery Family Trust. The total valuation is $50 million, mostly in diversified holdings from her design company and private investments. I stared at her, stunned. That can't be right. Helena and I lived paycheck to paycheck. We saved, but not like that. Marina opened a folder and slid a document toward me. Your wife was much more resourceful than she appeared. She inherited a small estate from her parents years ago, invested quietly, and built a substantial portfolio over 3 decades. She wanted it kept private for one reason. She turned the page. A handwritten note was paper-clipped to the top, written in Helena's unmistakable cursive. This trust is not for greed to inherit, but for love to protect. I traced the words with my fingers, feeling the indentation of her pen strokes, as if she had pressed them into my skin. There's a clause, Marina continued softly. A condition she called the character provision. Helena believed that money reveals who a person truly is. The trust specifies that Dorian's access to any inheritance depends entirely on his conduct following her passing. I looked up, my heart pounding. His conduct? Yes. She asked that we observe how he treats you, how he speaks about the house, and whether he respects her memory. Only if he honors those values will he inherit. If not, the assets are to remain in your sole control. My mouth went dry. She saw this coming. Marina nodded. She told me, Dorian doesn't understand value yet. He confuses love with leverage. When I'm gone, Thad's silence will teach him what my words cannot. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Helena had planned for everything, even this. Even my silence. Marina reached into the folder again and pulled out a small USB drive. There's one more thing, she said. A video message from Helena, recorded a month before she passed. She wanted you to see it when you were ready. I took it with trembling hands. I don't know if I am. She smiled kindly. She knew you'd say that too. As I drove home, the city lights blurred past like ghosts. I could almost hear Helena's voice beside me, steady, loving, unyielding. Don't stop him, Thad. Let him write his own lesson. That night, I didn't watch the video. I placed the USB in Helena's jewelry box and locked it away. Not yet. I sat by the window, the house quiet except for the wind moving through the trees she'd planted. Somewhere out there, Dorian was already planning his next move, making calls, drafting numbers, pretending to be in control. He didn't know it yet, but every step he took towards selling this house was a step closer to his own reckoning. And this time, I wouldn't lift a finger to stop him. By the end of that week, the rhythm of my days had changed. I no longer checked the mail first thing in the morning. I no longer turned on the news. Instead, I waited for Dorian's next update, because every time he spoke, another layer of his intentions peeled away. He called on Friday, cheerful as ever. Dad, great news. Sabrina's ready to move forward. She's got a photographer scheduled for Monday, professional lighting, drone shots, the whole package. We'll make this place shine. I looked out the window toward the front yard Helena and I had planted together. The autumn leaves had started to fall, layering the lawn in a quiet gold. Dorian, I said slowly, I never agreed to list the house. He laughed. Come on, Dad. It's just photos. Nothing's official yet. You've got to trust May know how to handle this stuff. Trust. That word again. How easy it came to him, as if it were a currency he could spend at will. That evening, I called Marina. He's moving faster than I expected, I told her. Her tone was steady, deliberate. That's exactly what Helena predicted. Let him continue. The more confident he becomes, the clearer his choices will appear to him, and to everyone else. Everyone else? I asked. She wanted witnesses, Marina said quietly. When the truth surfaces, it won't just be a legal revelation. It will be a moral one. She wanted his character to be seen in full daylight. I didn't ask who the witnesses were. Something told me Helena's plan wasn't meant to be half understood. Monday morning came with bright skies, too cheerful for what I knew was coming. I stood at the top of the stairs while Sabrina and the photographer walked through the house. They discussed lighting angles and camera lenses like surgeons preparing for an operation. Let's clear out these old curtains, Sabrina said. They darken the room. Buyers want openness. Those curtains, Helena sewed them herself from imported linen. She used to say they reminded her of summer mornings in Florence, where she'd studied design in her 20s. Now they were just old to people who didn't know their story. From my place on the landing, I could hear Dorian downstairs, laughing with the photographer. Yeah, my mom had a good eye, but the place needs modernization. We'll get better offers if we remove some of her, sentimental touches. Sentimental touches. My jaw tightened. When they left, Dorian came upstairs, a brightness in his step that felt almost cruel. Dad, this is going to change everything for you. You'll finally be able to relax. No more maintenance, no more stress. I looked at him, my son who used to build model houses with his mother at the kitchen table, who used to run through this very hallway with paint on his hands. I searched his face for that boy, but he was gone, buried under ambition and self-assurance. Relaxation isn't the same as peace, Dorian, I said quietly. He frowned, dismissing the thought. You'll see. Once it's sold, you'll thank me. That night, after he left, I walked through every room in silence. The camera flashes had left faint reflections on the mirrors. The furniture seemed rearranged like strangers had disturbed something sacred. I stopped by Helena's studio. Her brushes were still lined up, untouched. Her final sketch sat beneath a glass sheet, the front elevation of this very house, with notes scribbled in the margins. Thad, if this house ever falls into hands that see only walls and prices, let it defend itself with truth. Defend itself. That line stayed with me. The next morning, Marina called again. I've spoken to the trust accountant, she said. Everything is ready for when the sale goes through. When? I asked. She paused. When Dorian believes it has. Her words chilled Menet because they were cruel, but because they carried Helena's precision. Every step, every silence, was part of something larger. That evening, I sat by Helena's piano, playing the single note she loved most, middle C. Its echo filled the house like a heartbeat. This wasn't just a test anymore. It was judgment wrapped in mercy. And soon, Dorian would stand before both. The listing went live on a Wednesday morning. Dorian called before breakfast, his voice charged with excitement. Dad, it's official. The house is online, and we already have 2 showings scheduled for tomorrow. Sabrina says the photos came out incredible. You won't believe the engagement we're getting. Engagement. He talked about our home the way marketers talk about social media metrics. I took a slow sip of coffee, staring at the beams of sunlight across the kitchen counter, the same counter Helena designed from reclaimed maple. That's good, son, I said calmly. He mistook my stillness for approval. I knew you'd come around. Wait until you see the offers. We'll be drowning in them. After the call, I sat in Helena's studio. The soft light from the skylight washed over her sketches, the same ones Dorian had once described as dated. On one sheet, I noticed a faint watermark I hadn't seen before, HM. Trust seal confidential. I smiled to myself. Even her drawings carried her signature secrets. Thursday came fast. The first showing was a young couple with matching smiles and renovation dreams. From my upstairs window, I watched Sabrina lead them across the yard, pointing to Helena's rose bushes. With the right landscaping, this could be a perfect entertainment space, she said. Perfect entertainment space. Helena used to call it her prayer garden. When they walked inside, I stayed silent, listening to their voices echo through the walls. It's cozy, the wife said. Cozy means small, her husband replied. We'd probably knock down that wall to open up the kitchen. Knock down that wall. The same wall Helena had fought to keep because she said, every family needs a little separation between noise and peace. Their laughter faded as they moved deeper inside. Each footstep sounded like a trespass. The second showing came that afternoon. Dorian joined this one in person, his polished shoes squeaking against the hardwood floors. The buyers, a middle-aged investor couple, walked through briskly, murmuring about flipping potential. Original woodwork, huh, the man said, tapping on the banister Helena had hand-sanded herself. Yeah, Dorian replied casually. But it's outdated. Most people would replace it. Replace it. Just like that, 4 decades of love and work dismissed in one breath. When the investors left, Dorian turned to me in the living room, grinning. They're seriously interested. Cash buyers, too. This could close in 30 days. He didn't see it, but something inside the house shifted then. The air grew heavier, thicker, like even the walls disapproved. I said nothing. I didn't have to. Helena's house was speaking for me now. That evening, I called Marina. He's found buyers, I said quietly. I know, she replied. I received the notice from their attorney. The closing is scheduled for March 15th. I froze. That's the day Helena passed. Marina's voice softened. She chose that date herself, Mr. Montgomery. Everything is unfolding according to her design. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. Helena always believed symmetry had power, that life and love should close their circles cleanly. The days leading up to the closing felt unreal. Dorian came over often, carrying papers, running numbers, talking fast. He'd started referring to the house as the property. The property's appraisal came in higher than expected, he said one night, flipping through a folder. We're looking at a solid offer, $650,000, cash. Once it clears, you'll have the funds for retirement. I'll help you invest the rest. You sound proud, I said. He grinned. I am. This was the smartest move we could have made. Smartest. Helena used to say, there's a difference between being smart and being wise. One builds, the other counts. When he left, I walked through the house one last time before the storm I knew was coming. Every sound, every shadow carried Helena's presence. I paused at her favorite window, where she used to sit with coffee and scripture. You were right, I whispered. He doesn't see it yet. But he will. The house seemed to exhale, as if preparing for the reckoning it had been promised. And I, its quiet keeper, simply waited, patient, deliberate, and grateful that silence was still the sharpest tool God ever gave me. March 15th. 1 year to the day since Helena took her last breath. The morning air felt eerily familiar, crisp, quiet, sacred. The kind of morning she loved, when she'd open every window and say, let the house breathe, Thad. A home should always have its own lungs. Now her house was waiting to exhale again. Dorian arrived at 9 sharp, practically vibrating with anticipation. He wore his best suit, tie perfectly centered, shoes polished enough to reflect the sky. Big day, Dad, he said brightly. By noon, you'll be liquid. Liquid. He meant wealthy. But Helena and I had never measured wealth that way. He drove us downtown to the title office, talking the entire read about investment options, about retirement villas, about a new development on the coast that might be perfect for me. I let him talk. I let his words fill the car like static, a dull hum that meant nothing. The office was modern and sterile, glass walls, white tile floors, a faint scent of printer ink. Inside the conference room sat the buyers, a couple in their 30s with renovation blueprints already rolled out on the table. Their agent, Sabrina, smiled when she saw us. Mr. Montgomery, she said politely. We're thrilled to close today. Are you? I replied, more to myself than to her. A woman from the title company, Patricia Brooks, spread the documents neatly across the polished mahogany table. We'll make this quick, she said. Cash sale, clear title, no contingencies. We should be done in under an hour. Dorian rubbed his hands together. Perfect. The buyers exchanged a glance, giddy and naive. They had no idea they were standing inside a test disguised as a transaction. Patricia slid the deed transfer toward me. We just need your signature here, Mr. Montgomery. I picked up the pen, held it, then set it down. The silence that followed was long enough to make everyone shift uncomfortably. Dad? Dorian said carefully. What's wrong? I looked up at him. There's something I need to do first. Before anyone could respond, I reached into my coat pocket and took out my phone. I need to make a call. Dad. But I was already dialing. MS. Vale, I said when she answered, we're ready. On my way, she replied. Dorian frowned. Who the hell is MS? Vale. Our attorney, I said simply. Attorney? For what? For this. The buyer's smiles faltered. Sabrina blinked rapidly, sensing trouble. Patricia from the title office looked confused but professional. 10 minutes later, the glass door opened, and Marina Vale walked in graceful, composed, carrying a leather briefcase embossed with gold initials. She moved with the quiet authority of someone who'd been waiting for this exact moment. Good morning, she said evenly. I'm here on behalf of the Montgomery Family Trust. The words hit Dorian like a slap. What trust? Marina opened her case, laying out neatly bound documents. Established 3 years ago by your late mother, Helena Montgomery. It governs all marital and financial assets of this estate, including the home in question. Dorian's jaw tightened. That's impossible. Mom didn't have that kind of money. She would have told me. Marina turned a page. Total valuation, $50 million, diversified investments. Your mother kept her finances private for good reason. Patricia gasped. The buyers froze. Dorian looked at me, eyes wide, voice trembling. Dad, $50 million? What is she talking about? She's talking about the truth, I said quietly. Your mother built more than a home, Dorian. She built a legacy and a test. Marina's tone was calm but firm. According to the trust, all assets remain under your father's sole authority until his passing. Your access to any inheritance is conditional, based entirely on your behavior following your mother's death. Dorian's face drained of color. Conditional? Yes. Your mother called it the character clause. She believed a man's true worth is shown in how he honors what he did not earn. The buyers shifted uneasily. Sabrina pretended to organize her papers, avoiding eye contact. Patricia cleared her throat. So what does that mean for this sale? Marina smiled faintly. It means this entire transaction is void. Dorian Montgomery has no legal authority to sell trust property. The silence that followed was absolute. The buyer's excitement collapsed into shock. Sabrina's confidence evaporated. Dorian's hands trembled. Dad, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I looked at Himi's son, the man Helena and I raised, now unraveling before strangers. You didn't want to know. You wanted control. He shook his head, desperate. I thought I was helping you. No, I said gently. You were helping yourself. His voice cracked. Dad, please tell her this can be fixed. I can change. I reached across the table and touched the trust document Helena had signed years before. Your mother didn't build this to punish you, Dorian. She built it to protect you from your own blindness. Marina closed the briefcase softly. Mr. Montgomery, she said to me, shall I finalize the record? Yes, I said. Let it stand. As she packed her things, Dorian slumped into his chair, face in his hands. The buyers excused themselves quietly, murmuring apologies that didn't matter. When the room finally emptied, Dorian whispered, I ruined everything. No, I said, standing. You revealed everything. And as I walked toward the door, I could almost hear Helena's voice again, soft, patient, triumphant. The walls will speak, Thad. Let them echo the truth. That day, they did. And the sound of them broke my son's silence for the first time in years. That night, after everything unraveled at the title office, the house was quiet again. Not the heavy kind of silence that grief brings, but a gentler one, the kind that waits to be filled with change. I sat alone in the living room, the fire barely flickering, papers from the trust still open on the table. Dorian hadn't called since the confrontation. Maybe he didn't know what to say. Maybe he finally understood the value of silence himself. At 7:10 p.m., headlights swept across the front window. A moment later, I heard the familiar creak of the porch step. The doorbell rang softly, like a question. When I opened the door, Dorian stood there, his face pale, eyes swollen. He looked nothing like the confident man from that morning. His tie was gone. His voice, when it came, was small. Dad, can I come in? I nodded. He stepped over the threshold like a man crossing into sacred ground. His eyes wandered the room, Helena's piano, her sketches framed on the wall, the table she restored. Things he'd once dismissed now seemed to humble him. I've been driving around for hours, he said, his voice unsteady. Trying to think of something smart to say, something that could fix what happened. But I don't think there are words for it. I gestured toward Helena's favorite chair, and he sat down slowly, his shoulders sagging under invisible weight. Mom planned all of this, didn't she? He whispered. She did, I said quietly. Because she knew what she was protecting. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I thought I was helping you. But I was just managing you. The way I manage numbers. The way I manage people. I didn't realize how empty that kind of control feels until today. For a while, we sat in silence, the only sound the soft ticking of the clock, Helena's clock. The same one she wound every Sunday, saying, even time needs care if you want it to stay kind. Dorian spoke again, his voice trembling. Dad, $50 million. I don't even know how to understand that. Mom kept that secret her whole life. She didn't keep it from us, I said. She kept it for us. He looked up. You're not angry. I was, I admitted. But not for the reason you think. I wasn't angry about the house or the money. I was angry that you couldn't see what your mother built, the kind of wealth that doesn't need a number. He swallowed hard. I see it now. I see her everywhere. In the walls. In the light. In the way this house still feels alive. I leaned back, watching the fire fade into embers. She wanted you to learn that lesson before you inherited anything else. That was the whole point. Dorian's eyes glistened. And if I never inherit a cent, I still got more than I deserve." Those words, "more than I deserve," were the first honest thing he'd said in months. Maybe years. Before he left, he turned toward the piano. "She used to play in the mornings," he said softly. I'd forgotten that. He pressed one key, middle C, the same note I'd played the night before. The sound lingered, clear and fragile. When the echo faded, he looked at me. "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "you live the way your mother wanted, humbly, patiently, gratefully. When you've done that long enough, Marina has something for you." He nodded slowly, understanding. A week later, Marina called. "He's coming in tomorrow," she said. "He's ready for the next part, the letters Helena left him." "Good," I said. "He's finally listening." Months passed. Dorian began showing up on Sundays, no suits, no business talk. Just coffee, silence, and sometimes questions about his mother's sketches. He paid the buyers back for their expenses, apologized to Sabrina and the title staff. Slowly, repentance began to look like growth. One afternoon, he brought his daughter, my granddaughter, Aria. She ran through the house, touching the walls with wonder. "Grandma's house smells like sunshine," she said. Dorian smiled faintly. "Yeah. It does." After they left, I sat by Helena's window, the one she'd always opened on spring mornings. Outside, the garden was blooming again. The roses she planted had survived another winter. I whispered, "You did it, Helena. Your plan worked." And for the first time since she died, I felt peace instead of grief, because silence had done what love designed it to do. It hadn't destroyed Dorian. It had saved him.